The city of El-Fasher has been the Sudanese military's last remaining holdout in the country's Darfur region and has been besieged by the rival Rapid Support Forces or RSF for some 18 months, adding to a devastating humanitarian crisis and setting the city up as a major battleground in the multi-year civil war. However, in what may be a major turning point, over the weekend the RSF announced that they'd finally taken control of El-Fasher, effectively splitting the country into two separate zones of control. So in this video, we're going to take another look at Sudan's civil war, what just happened over the weekend, and why this leaves the international community with an uncomfortable dilemma. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. It's been a while since we did a video on Sudan, so let's start with a quick rattle through some Sudanese history, starting in 1989 when Omar al-Bashir took over Sudan via a military coup. From there, he basically rigged the elections to stay on as Sudan's head of state for the next 30 years. His government continued the Sudanese civil war, a long-running conflict between non-Muslim ethnic minorities in the south against the mostly Muslim central government that ended with the creation of South Sudan in 2011. Soon after, he reignited the long-running war in Darfur despite previous peace agreements. According to an investigation by the International Criminal Court, al-Bashir, quote, masterminded and implemented a plan to destroy the three main ethnic groups in Darfur, these groups being the non-Arab Fur, Masalit and Zaghawa peoples. The ICC concluded that this campaign included murder, rape and deportation. A few years later, in 2013, the UN estimated that up to 300,000 ethnic Darfuri people had been killed, with millions more displaced. Al-Bashir was eventually charged by the ICC for directing a campaign of mass killing, rape and pillage against civilians in Darfur, becoming the first sitting head of state to be indicted by the ICC. He was eventually overthrown in 2019 by the Sudanese revolution. After ousting al-Bashir, the military toppled the government and declared a state of emergency, taking total control over the country, but promising a transition to civilian leadership and elections in 2022. However, the military got cold feet and staged another coup in October 2021. The coup was led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who basically heads up Sudan's military and is now Sudan's leader, and supported by the Rapid Support Forces or RSF, which is a powerful paramilitary group that emerged out of the Janjaweed, a predominantly Arab militia that, in the 2000s, were used by then-President Bashir to brutally suppress a rebellion by groups in Darfur. However, this alliance between the Sudanese armed forces and the RSF would not survive. Tensions grew amid a power struggle between military chief General Burhan and RSF leader Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, commonly known as Hemeti. One of the final straws precipitating the civil war was a dispute over plans to integrate the 100,000-strong RSF into the armed forces. Eventually, on April 15, 2023, fighting erupted between the RSF and the Sudanese military, plunging Sudan into a brutal civil war. After more than 2 years of fighting, the military has secured control of most of the north, east and centre, including the Sudanese capital Khartoum, which it wrestled back full control of in March this year. The capital, however, has been described by the BBC as a burnt-out shell, and Burhan has instead turned the coastal Red Sea city of Port Sudan into the military and government headquarters. Meanwhile, the RSF has managed to gain control of almost all of Darfur, in western Sudan, and much of southern Sudan, with 4 of the Darfur region's 5 local capitals falling to the RSF in 2023. While the war in Sudan is a civil war, it's drawn in various powerful outside powers, whose interests range from ensuring stability on their borders and in their region, to political influence and to accessing Sudan's significant natural resources that include oil, gas, and particularly gold deposits. Egypt, Sudan's neighbour to the north, is seen as the primary backer of the Sudanese military and General Burhan, while the United Arab Emirates is seen as the main backer of the RSF. According to the UN, there is credible evidence that the UAE is providing the RSF with weaponry and ammunition, with shipments entering Sudan via neighbouring Chad, though the UAE denies this. Civilians have borne the brunt of the civil war, and both the armed forces and the RSF have been accused of committing war crimes and atrocities. But in January, the United States accused the RSF of committing genocide against Darfur's non-Arab population. Until now, the city of El-Fasher had been the last major urban centre in Darfur still held by the army and its allies, but the city has been besieged by the RSF and its allies for some 18 months. In August, the United Nations said that more than 600,000, half of them children, had been displaced from El-Fasher and its surrounding camps, while an estimated 260,000 civilians remained trapped in the city, cut off from aid and encircled by the RSF and an earthen wall that it's built around much of El-Fasher. The Council on Foreign Relations writes that indiscriminate shelling and drone attacks have damaged or destroyed hospitals and mosques, maimed and killed civilians, and forced families into makeshift underground shelters. But over the weekend, the RSF said in a statement that it had captured El-Fasher, quote, from the grip of mercenaries and militias allied with the terrorist army. For months, rights groups and the UN have warned of the risk to civilians should the RSF seize El-Fasher. For example, UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk highlighted earlier this month the risk of large-scale ethnically driven attacks and atrocities in the city by the RSF, which, given the paramilitary group's history in the region, would not be unprecedented. So, what happens next? Well, further substantial changes in territorial control look unlikely in the near future, and Sudan is now functionally split in two. The RSF control an essentially contiguous territory in the southwest, and have previously said that they hope to form a rival government based out of El-Fasher, while the army controls another contiguous territory in the southeast. This leaves the international community with an uncomfortable dilemma: whether to recognise Sudan's effective partition or insist upon the existing international borders. Neither are good options. Acknowledging Sudan's partition and formally recognising the two new states that would emerge from it risks effectively rewarding Sudan's warlords and exacerbating instability in the Horn of Africa by encouraging the various other separatist movements. On the other hand, though, stubbornly insisting on existing international borders ignores facts on the ground and makes it harder for international organisations to provide economic or humanitarian aid. This has always been one of the big arguments for recognising Somaliland, another effectively independent but internationally unrecognised state in the region, which struggles to access international aid despite being one of the poorest countries in the world. This issue becomes even more pressing in the case of Sudan, which is now at a real risk of humanitarian catastrophe. If you're looking to learn more about this topic, then there's plenty of other outlets reporting on it online. But what about everything you don't see? Or what if the sources you've grown to trust are purposefully leaving out information? Thankfully, our sponsor this week, Ground News, are experts at lifting the veil on media bias. That's because Ground News is a website and app that gathers thousands of articles from around the world, expertly merging all different sides of political bias into one place, making it simple to see multiple perspectives of the same event. In addition, every single story comes with a detailed view of the bias distribution, factuality scores, and even specific ownership information. For example, if we take this story on the RSF capturing El-Fasher, you can see that 84 sources are reporting on it, and it's featured here in one place. If we delve a bit deeper, we can even see that most of the coverage is coming from the right. While it would normally be overwhelming to sift through thousands of articles to find how they're being reported differently by either side, Ground News offers a handy bias comparison feature, where you can do this with the click of a button. For instance, if we go back to this story in Sudan, we're able to learn that the left uses terms like conquer and highlights fears of a bloodbath, while the right emphasises that the army's backbone was broken by the event. But that's not all. For stories that have been disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum or the other, their aptly named blind spot feed puts all of those into one place to help you stay grounded and informed. So, if you want to begin questioning the narrative instead of just consuming it, you can get started today, as we're partnering with Ground News to get you 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. Just subscribe through the link in the description, or scan the QR code on screen, and you'll be supporting an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.